from the time we're kids, we have a tendency to listen to our parents sometimes, most of the time. So, let's say you're out for a walk and you go to cross the street and your parent, your mom or your dad kind of freaks out and says, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
Okay? To prevent you from getting run over.
Right.
Okay? We have an inbuilt tendency, it starts from a very early age, but continues. And this is called authority, the authority principle. We have a tendency to listen to what authority figures tell us to do.
Okay.
And that can be our parents. That can be a person in a leadership type of role. So, if the president of your respective country tells you to do something, you're probably going to do it. Has to do with other folks who are seen in positions of authority, police people, fire people, anyone who is perceived as some type of authority, we're far more likely to listen to than not.
You should tell the story of the doctor commercial.
Yes, this is awesome. Okay.
This is ridiculous.
This is how
this works.
I'm glad you remembered that. This is great. This is actually a combination of authority and association. Back in, I think this was the 80s, Maxwell House, the coffee company, created a commercial that featured this well-known TV doctor. Okay, it wasn't
TV
a TV doctor,
doctor.
not a real doctor. Had nothing to do with coffee
or medicine,
and basically just said, "I like him."
Wait, but
I like Maxwell House.
But the doctor was in the doctor coat.
Yes,
the actor
with a stethoscope. Okay, TV doctor gear. Okay, there should be no reason why this worked. But it did. It worked really well, and the company ran it for a really long time because, doctors know a lot about coffee. I don't know. But
crazy.
Just because it was coming, the message was coming from an authority figure, it was received, people were far more receptive to that than, I don't, some
then
random
if
person off the street.
Even if the actor probably would have just been in like a sweater.
Right.
It's so crazy.
They've actually done some studies of doctors who, it was actually compliance studies, because this is a big thing in medicine, right? Doctor tells you to do something. How well do you do it? Do you take your medicine? Do you, do these behavioral changes, whatever?
Right.
And they always found that the symbols of the long white coat and the stethoscope carry a lot of weight, which is why doctors will often wear a stethoscope even if they don't use it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because that's a symbol of authority, and people are far more likely to comply with a request from a doctor who is in full, what people think of as doctor gear.
Interesting.
So, it's funny because this even extends, as in the case of the Maxwell House commercial, to people who have no authority over what it is they're actually talking about. There's also, and you're reading a book recently of, what is it, Opening Skinner's Box?
It's, Opening Skinner's Box. Really amazing book written by Lauren Slater about the 10, in her opinion, most influential social psychologists or social psychological experiments of the last century. Unbelievable.
Tell them about the Milgram experiment. The shock
Well,
therapy thing.
most of you probably know this because it's very, very well known and really sad, but Stanley Milgram did an experiment, and he was testing for authority. And so what he did is that in the university where he was, he had a whole bunch of students come, and he told them that they were testing someone's ability to withstand a certain number of volts of electricity. And what was interesting is that he had an actor who was playing the person who was going to be shocked come in, and it seemed like when you came into the experiment that either one of you could do either role. So that was the thing. You feel like you could be in the seat. But anyways, then the person who was going to be administering shocks was in a different room than the person who was actually shocked. And someone, actually, it's funny you say that, in a white lab coat, was instructing the person who was actually being studied to go up the ladder and shock people up to the point where sometimes they thought they had actually killed someone else. And what they were studying is how far would someone go? Now, what was interesting is that they found out that 66% of people would go all the way to the top of the people who they studied.
Yep, when an authority figure was there.
When an authority figure was there. In the study, 33% actually at a certain level stopped and said, no, this is crazy, like this is dangerous, whatever. What's really interesting is that, and this is what's so amazing about the book, is that it gets you out of just the numbers and it gets you into the stories. Lauren Slater actually tracked down 2 of the people who had participated in this. Because you could definitely, you could take away from this, oh my gosh, the people that went all the way, apparently in, I don't know, the like 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, apparently social psychology was really interested in authority because they were trying to figure out why did all of these people listen to Hitler and kill all these millions of people, which is why so many authority studies were done. So anyways, you would think that people who would go all the way up to however many volts would be the people who would be, killing tons of their fellows in a concentration camp. What's interesting is that didn't necessarily seem to be the way it worked. She tracked down one guy who went all the way up, and he said, she tracked down one guy who stopped, and the reason he stopped, he said, is because he had a bad heart. And the whole reason he stopped is because it was making him so nervous, he thought he was going to get a heart attack. He didn't say anything about the other guy. This guy went on to be in wars, said that yes, he did kill people in wars. Anyways, basically she felt no correlation. This other gentleman that she spoke to at the time of the experiment was having a really difficult time with himself because he was a closeted homosexual. And after the experiment, once he learned that it really was about authority, like totally looked at his whole life going, man, I've been listening to the authority of society and I haven't really come out with what I really think is right. And so he changed his entire life and he became an activist and he became like a teacher of inner city people. And what's crazy is that even though these studies are amazing, particularly for the people who were involved, they could have ended up showing the completely opposite thing that you think they did. But bottom line is 66% of people, when listening to an authority
and
figure,
getting back to
would go all the way up.
The authority makes people do things that they otherwise
wouldn't have done.
Do.
Yeah.
Which, authority in very many circumstances is important. And if you're a leader in your company or a manager or whatever, you're in a position of authority. Yeah. The thing is, that affects the people that you work with. That affects the people around you. If you have a boss, it affects how you interact with your boss.
Oh, sure.
The whole idea of kill the messenger syndrome of, don't tell the boss something that's going to upset them.
Right.
Is actually a really big deal in a lot of cases. And actually, this is something that, if you read biographies of very effective leaders or, CEOs of companies or whatever, this is actually even in the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It talks about, as a leader, not signaling what you think, because then the people who are reporting to you, the people over whom you have authority, will tell you what they think you want to hear.
Rather than the
which
truth.
may not be the thing that you actually need to hear.
Right.
And so, dealing with authority, both in terms of your position to it, as in the Milgram experiment, authority figures can get us to do things that we might not otherwise choose to do on our own. But also, as a business leader and being someone potentially in a position of authority, you really need to understand how that affects people and how they respond to it. So be very cognizant, both as a leader and as a follower. Authority has a lot of major ramifications. And if you know what they are in advance, you can structure your environment in such a way to make sure you don't do something you wouldn't otherwise do. And you also get the information as a leader you need to make good decisions.